Hello, everybody. This is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard. And today we're going to continue with reading of the book, Mounting Sleipnir. This is the fourth installment of the reading. So, as always, I'm going to read it and give any editorial comments. If it sparks me to start talking about stuff, I will. If my thoughts have changed, I'll share that as well. And then afterwards, if anybody's here, I will be happy to take question and answer. Yes, I'm just putting all my links up. Those of you who are following my channel, some of the recent videos about what you need to do to make money on YouTube, there's really two main things. Don't waste your time trying to make money just off of advertisements, because you don't know if you're going to have that kind of following. Come on and make videos and make sure that people can see your... Is that the one I want? Nope. Make sure that people can see your links. That's it. So that you have... So that's what I'm trying to do right now. There, now I'm all ready. Now I can start. See, so now you've seen all of my links. That's how you do it. You just keep putting up the videos and make sure that there's some place for people to go to purchase whatever is amazing about you. All right. So, by the way, I guess I'll just do some business now. Thunderwizard.com is the best way to support this channel and to motivate me to keep coming on and keep making videos. Even if you subscribe at the $25 level per month, you get access to Mastery of Shamanism. Who knows how many thousands of hours of video that you're not going to get on the free channel. And you can unsubscribe whenever you want. Of course, subscribe and hit the bell button to this channel. All right, let's now go and read the book, Mounting Sleipnir. The Indo-European roots of Germanic polytheism. All right, so let me bring that up. Where'd it go? It's going to be right there. All right. So today we're going to be starting on page 67 of my PDF version. And in my version, on page 67, we start with a new chapter, which is entitled Wod, Will, and Weoch in Visionary Traveling, which is just another way of saying shamanic journeying. Wod, Will, and Weoch is the Anglo-Saxon pronunciation of Odin, Vili, and Ve, the three parts of the self: higher self, lower self, and middle self. All right, let's continue. Now, despite modern Western culture's focus on the power of will, we are not completely devoid of the other two powers of Wod and Weoch. They are still here within each of us. Through meditation, ritual, and energy work, combined with focused intention to evolve to our highest potential, the powers of Wod and Weoch can be reignited and aligned with our already familiar power of will. So what I said in the last installment of this is that of those three words in English, Wod, Will, and Weoch, we only keep the word will. We still use that as part of our vocabulary. But, I mean, ask anybody who speaks English, what does the word Wod mean? They're not going to know what you're talking about. What does the word Weoch mean? They're not going to know what you're talking about. It's because that's a good indication of how far we have strayed from our... Boy, all the noise is going on. How far we've strayed from all of our shamanic historic background. We're just not, our culture is nowhere near what it was. So we're going to find out what these three powers are doing and how we can access them in shamanic journeying. So let's continue. In the Norse myth, the Gylfaginning, which precedes the famous myth, the Havamal, the speech of the Gylfaginning is the speech of the High One, Hava Mal. And it is one of the most popular that's quoted from. It's like the New Testament in terms of neo-heathenism. Neo-heathens quote from the Havamal the way that Christians quote from the four Gospels. So in the speech of the High One, we have King Gilf, who begins to meditate on the nature of the celestial gods and is spiritually transported to the temple of the gods in Asgard, where he is escorted to meet the king of the celestial gods. Quote, he, King Gilf, wondered how the Asa people were so knowing that all went according to their wishes. He considered that this was caused either by the people's own nature, meaning the Aesir's own nature, or was brought about by the gods to whom they, the Aesir, sacrificed. He determined to find this out and prepared to travel to Asgard in all secrecy, disguised as an old man. But the Asa people were wiser. They saw his journey before he came and caused him to be beset by illusions. When he arrived at the court, he saw a hall so high that he could barely see the top of it. Its roof was covered with golden shields, as other roofs might be with shingles. As I read this myth, I am struck by the description of the Aesir as being like humans in that they too made sacrifice to even higher deities than themselves. This would indicate that we humans are not able to access the gods that are worshipped by the Aesir. It describes the Aesir as people. Perhaps the Aesir are simply very high-level shamans themselves who have surpassed this earthly level of existence through their spiritual powers. Such is the beauty of the polytheist worldview, that where there is no definite endpoint for reality as opposed to a dualistic, literalist mindset. In animism, the cosmos is seen as an infinite stratum of ever-unfolding energy. It should be noted that Gilf was a king. Teutonic kings were shaman kings. In pre-Christian Teutonic lands, the king was expected to be a powerful wizard whose spiritual powers and religious sacrifices attracted the favor of the gods for his people. If the land suffered drought, war, disease, or any other natural disaster, it was seen as a reflection on the king's poor abilities as a wizard. If such a thing were to occur, the Teutonic tribal custom to kill the king and replace him with someone whose spiritual powers were strong enough to protect the people. So, I don't know why my mouth stopped working, but basically what I'm saying here is that in tribal Teutonic animism, the king, the chieftain, was appointed. It was like elected. I mean, we Americans think that we invented democracy, but we didn't. Teutonic tribal custom was very democratic, and so a chieftain got there because of what he could bring. He was perhaps a strong warlord, perhaps he was able to bring prosperity, but among other things, he was thought of having the ability to go into shamanic trance and work out things with the gods and the spirits so that his people would be happy and successful. And there's records that if they weren't able to do that, they'd be put to death. So, wanting to be king wasn't necessarily, something that anybody would you got to have a good pair on you to be able to want to do that. Anyway, I also, I spoke about it here, but I did find it really interesting, again, as I'm reading this, that the Aesir was in this guy's mind. Now, we don't know this. This is him thinking. This is him, King Gilf is wondering, what is going on? Are they just like us in that they do all these sacrifices to the gods, their gods, and as a result, that's why they're so wise and so powerful and all that. We don't know that that's the case. But it's interesting that that was his thought process there. And that he went, and the other thing I like here is that there is no difference between King Gilf choosing to take a journey. It doesn't say what I would say, which is, oh, there was this guy and he was wondering what the gods were like, and so he took a shamanic journey. And then I would want to tell you the steps that he took to make that happen. He sat and he played, drum music, and he breathed 100 times deeply and then went into trance. I want to do that because I want to know how it's done. But here we just assume that we don't know what his powers were, but he had the power to just decide to take a spiritual journey to a spiritual land. And it's not treated like anything else. And this is something that we find when we look at, again, very, quote, primitive tribal people. When they talk about, the spiritual world and the physical, there's no difference. If you're talking to, I'm specifically pulling from knowledge that modern anthropologists are saying when they talk to tribal people in the Amazon, that somebody will say, the other day I was walking through the forest and that tree over there exploded. And they're looking right at the tree. Obviously the tree didn't explode, it's right there. So you have to be able to hear, they're talking about in the spirit realm, this guy was having a vision, and in the vision that tree exploded, and that meant this, that, and the other thing. But for them, it's part of reality. There's not like this reality and then another reality. There's just reality. There's just different levels of it, and it's all existing. There are multiple levels of reality existing on top of this one. And here we have the same thing. King Gilf decides he's going to travel to Asgard. It's just part of his reality. All right, let's continue. So in this myth, and here I go to say exactly what I just said. So in this myth, when King Gilf is reported to travel or journey to Asgard, this would have meant, since he was a shaman king, he planned to travel to Asgard by means of his spiritual powers of meditation. As King Gilf embarks on his trance journey to Asgard, he encounters a man, quote, juggling 7 small swords at once, unquote, who questions him and then directs him to Odin. At the entrance to the hall, he, Gilf, saw a man juggling 7 small swords at once. Gilf was asked his name and gave it as Ganglare, wandering learner, saying he had come by watery ways and wished to find lodging here. He then asked whose hall it was. The juggler replied it belonged to the king, and quote, I shall take you to see him, he said, so that you yourself can ask him his name. The juggler seemed to act as a guardian who tests King Gilf by asking him his name. Notice how Gilf does not answer by giving his human name, but by giving a name that represents his spiritual quest. Not giving out one's true name in shamanic traveling is one of the first things shamans are taught. It's also, I remember being taught by my Taoist teacher that if a ghost calls you by your name, you don't respond, you pretend you don't hear. Because they said if you respond to your name being said by a ghost, it means that now that you've responded, the ghost owns you. So your name has power, your name has connection to yourself. By the way, don't get too flipped out by that. I don't take that all that seriously. But it just gives you an idea of how powerful the name is. The opposite is actually more true, which is if a spirit, in terms of a spirit floating around your house or something like that, if you call it by its name, if you find out what its name is and call it by its name, you own that spirit, or at least you have some power over it. And that's what exorcists do when they call out. What I remember way back in the day, I would say, give me your name. I would have them give me their name, and they didn't want to do that, and I would use my skill as an exorcist. Your name is important and can have power. Although, again, as I said, don't get too scared. I wouldn't, if a ghost called me by my name, it might scare me or whatever, but, that doesn't mean that ghost has any power over me unless I choose to give it to them. All right, so apparently, back to the text, apparently giving out a shamanic substitute name is sufficient, and the juggler allows Gilf to pass and enter the hall of Odin. This is typical in vision quests. In the spirit realm, a shaman will often choose to shape-shift into whatever form he believes will help him blend in. When the average inexperienced shaman engages in spiritual journeying, he may appear as an outsider, which may frighten off potential allies or even attract aggression. So Gilf chooses to shapeshift into an old man in the hopes that the spirits will be more helpful to him. His name of Wandering Learner lets the spirit allies know his true intent, and this better helps them provide accurate guidance to him. This cryptic image of the juggler is not elaborated upon further, which indicates to me that this would have been a familiar symbol to pre-Christian Teutons, at least perhaps to a wizard. This juggler image may seem to the uninitiated listener as merely an interesting peculiarity placed here by the myth's author solely for the entertainment of the reader. However, from the traditional understanding of the purpose of myth and Indo-European polytheism, there is no such thing as an unimportant detail. If this is a true myth, then this image of the sword juggler is a very important clue instructing wizards on how to enter the Hall of Odin in meditation. From a spiritual perspective, the instruction seems quite clear. In order for a wizard to gain access to one's higher centers, one must first juggle, balance, the 7 energy centers in the body known as chakras by Vedic yogis. Swords have always been symbols of spiritual power in European mythology. If the Germanic tribes were not acquainted with the Indo-European esoteric doctrine of the 7 chakras, or wheels, then why is he juggling 7 small swords? The Germanic tribes and the Vedics were very closely related linguistically and culturally, and while there is no longer any written historical evidence linking yoga to both the Vedics and the Germanic tribes, there are some very interesting archaeological clues that point to a common spiritual origin shared by the yogis of India and the wizards of Europe. One such clue is found in the Oseberg ship burial in Norway. It's a very famous archaeological site where all kinds of things, have been unearthed, and to this day we're still looking at them, trying to figure them out. In 1904, the remains of 2 women were found buried in an ancient Viking ship near Oseberg, Norway. These women were thought to have been pre-Christian heathen priestesses, or volur, staff carrier women, who would have been seen as high-level shamans. In that burial were found numerous magical objects such as wands and staffs. But one artifact was a bronze bucket handle. On that bucket handle was a bronze statuette of a shaman in the meditative posture commonly known today as full lotus. This meditative posture is well known among Hindu yogis and Taoist wizards as the most powerful posture for high-level internal alchemy meditation. And in the book, I've got the picture here, which, let's see, maybe I can bring it into this. Let's see, can I copy this from here? No, I can't. All right, never mind. Trust me, though, it's pretty amazing. He is in complete full lotus, sitting there, and he's actually, grabbing his feet and pulling his feet up onto his thighs, exactly like you would see in a yoga studio. Which, by the way, Taoist shamans do the same thing. They just don't talk about it. They don't make a big deal out of it. But they do the same thing in a lot of their meditations. This artifact dates to 800 AD, which is long before our modern street corner yoga studio. We moderners see yogic practice as something. Sorry, I don't want that to keep buzzing. I'll just turn it off. This artifact dates to 800 AD, which is long before our modern street corner yoga studios. We moderners see yoga practice as something exotic that was recently imported into Western culture. While this may be true that our modern post-Christianized culture does not contain such spiritual practices any longer, it is possible that yogic meditation was at one time common among all prehistoric Indo-European peoples. If the Paleolithic continuity paradigm, before I go any further, if yoga, which has been in existence for we don't know how long and is practiced and is well known, we know about it. We have a strong association with that to India's spiritual practices. But if if all of India had, say, converted to Islam or Christianity, and the same thing had happened to them and that had been completely wiped out, we wouldn't have any records of it. If nobody practiced it anymore, especially if it wasn't, for hundreds of years, then we wouldn't even know it existed. Because when you read the Vedas, you don't read in the Vedas about how you have to sit in full lotus and you have to breathe like this. It doesn't tell you exactly how the meditations were done. It just talks about it. We know that the priests, things that that, for instance, soma. We know that they drank a concoction that they called soma, which is the word for the ambrosial nectar of immortality. We know that they drank that, and we don't know, but we believe very strongly that it had things like in it, like ephedra and cannabis and other things like that, which put them in an altered state of consciousness, which they used to channel Indra, especially. They stopped doing that. We know that, among other things, because we don't know what was in the soma. So the point being is that just because we don't have any historical records of, yoga being practiced or qigong or, any kinds of stuff that we associate with, other high-level spiritual practices, that doesn't mean that they weren't practiced. That it may have been something that was passed down from teacher to student. It was before writing, so they didn't have it written down in manuals or anything like that. So there's no way for us to know, except when we see these kinds of things. Now there's other pictures as well, which again I don't have with me, but I've used in other things, where we see shamans in half lotus or full lotus, and these are really old, hundreds or thousands of years old in Europe. So we just assume that they very well may have been doing these same kinds of technologies. And it may be a technology that, by the way, I use the word technology meaning body of knowledge. That's what technology means, body of knowledge. They may have used this spiritual technology because they discovered it. So we know that the Taoists do this. They sit in full lotus and they meditate. The Hindu yogis sit in full lotus and meditate. Now we don't have any reason to believe that the Taoists in China and the yogis of India shared this knowledge with each other. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But it's very likely that that's just what happens when shamans do the work of experimenting and working with how to best connect with their energies and to meditate. So the same thing could have happened here. This could have just been something that, if you're a shaman way back when, this is something that you figure out. And anyway, let's continue. If the Paleolithic continuity paradigm is true, then the precursor to yoga may have been practiced by the first Proto-Indo-European peoples in Africa 50,000 years ago, who brought the foundations for these mystical practices into the Northern Hemisphere when they migrated out of Africa. If this is true, then East Indian yogic practices may not be something exclusive to India, but perhaps the Indians are the only Indo-European culture that retained this prehistoric practice into modern times. This bucket handle artifact is strong evidence that our Teutonic ancestors practiced a form of meditation that may have been derived from a common Indo-European meditative practice shared by the descendants of both the Vedic and Germanic tribes. In short, our ancestors must have practiced a now forgotten tribal Germanic form of yogic meditation. Anyway, back to our myth. While in Asgard, Gylf is brought into the hall to meet the king, who is none other than Woden himself. Quote, he, Gylf, saw 3 high seats, one above the other, with 3 figures seated one on each. He asked what names these chieftains had, and his conductor replied that he who sat in the lowest high seat was a king named the High One. The one above him was named As High, and the uppermost was named Third. In my opinion, the thrones of each corresponds with 3... Okay, So there's the quote there, right? So you've got three kings sitting one on top of another. And the name is the high one, which would be the guy on the bottom. The second guy in the middle is named as high. And then the one at the top is named third. All right, let's continue. In my opinion, the thrones of each king corresponds with the three major energy centers in the body, consisting of the third eye, the heart, and the navel centers. I'm not alone in my general interpretation. It is widely believed that the three kings in this myth are in fact the three powers of Odin, Vili, and Ve. In my experience, the king on the lower seat, named the High One, would represent the power of the finite personality, the power of will. This is why the lowest of the three kings does all the talking for the other two kings, because it is through the lower energy center that all communication occurs on a material level. So I just gave you something. Apparently, I didn't bother to quote how we know that. But apparently the only one of the three kings, as he's looking at, that's communicating to him is the one on the bottom, which would correspond with the navel center, which is the subconscious, the unconscious mind. Everything having to do with being human is the lower center. And so the lower center is your personality, your awareness, ideas and concepts that need to be communicated verbally. Language. These are all things of the lower center. Once you get up into the higher centers, you go beyond that, and you don't need to do that. So it's interesting that the lowest one is the one that chooses to communicate. If this were a modern fairy tale, somebody might want to bring out the idea that the one on the top is the one that has all of the authority, so he's going to be the one that's going to do all the speaking. But again, we're looking at ancient mythology, which is showing us that there is a consistent energetic science behind all of this that is reflected in spiritual practices that have an unbroken connection into prehistory. I use that term over and over again in my books. That's why I don't talk about Wicca. I don't talk about Gardnerian Wicca. I don't talk about or teach anything having to do with modern Western magic, because these are all things that have been concocted or pasted together after Christianity. It is something new that's come into existence. Doesn't mean it doesn't work. It doesn't mean it's not derived on ancient understandings. I'm just saying it doesn't have a continuous transmission from teacher to student going back into the original times. That's why when you're asking me what kind of stuff do I look for before I get into this, African shamanic drumming, Taoist mysticism, and East Indian yogic practices, because most of the other stuff has all been concocted in modern times. And the truth is that even before I came to this realization, while I was training in whatever it was, and I'd go and check out Gardnerian Wicca or modern Western magic especially, I would just go, the power is just not here. The difference for me between, say, doing Taoist energy magic and doing some kind of modern Western magical thing is the difference between, an electric motorcycle on a slalom course and an 18-wheeler on that same slalom course. It's just, one is really smooth and efficient and fast and quiet, and the other one is just big and clunky, and you have to throw it around, and it's just, you can tell there's just something missing. There's just something that's not the same. So when we read the mythology of our ancestors, if you don't know what you're looking for, you're just going to bypass this stuff. Me, I read this and I go, yep, this is ancient mythology. How do I know? Because it's telling me what I've already learned in these traditions and that have an unbroken connection into prehistory. All right. Let's keep going here. Where did I say? So this is why the lowest of the three kings does all the talking for the other two kings, because it is through the lower center that all communication occurs on a material level. Our navel center is how shamans are able to connect with the energies of nature. The second king is named as high. indicating, to me at least, that the heart center of Ve, or whale, and the lower emotional center of will share an equivalent power status and are important for action in the material world. The upper king's name is merely third, which is another name for Woden another name for Woden himself, found in other Teutonic myths. Oh, I had forgotten that. So this indicates to me that third is the highest ranking king among these three. In my opinion, third represents the third eye and the power of Wod, or spiritual consciousness. I was also going to say, and I thought I had put it in here, but apparently I didn't. If all of these three centers were the same in terms of authority, then they would have the same name. It would be the high one as high and once again as high. But this is a totally different name. So again, every detail is different. And if that's, in my experience, the way mythology works. So let's keep going. It is not particularly well known, but I have discovered that it is the power of the subconscious or the unconscious in the navel center, the power of the dwarves, that is responsible for the ability of spiritual travel. The fact that Gilf is communicating with the lowest of the three kings accurately reflects my experience that it is through the lower subconscious and unconscious centers of will in the navel that a wizard communicates with other spirits entities while in trance. And consequently, when a shaman communicates with other humans who also have these three power centers, it is through the navel that any communication by means of speech is accomplished. So from my perspective, before I go any further, that's also the case with your intuition about people. Here's something interesting about your average street corner psychic. Your average street, and again, this is a generality, so don't get your panties in a bunch if I misrepresent you. But generally speaking, let's say if I were casting a film and I wanted to have a scene in Venice Beach, California of, if you've ever been there, Venice Beach, you have everybody's lined up along the boardwalk there and they've got their table and they're doing their thing, whether they're selling crystals or they're selling, aromatherapy or whatever the hell, or psychic readings or whatever. If I were to cast a film and I wanted to have a psychic who was sitting there on the beach, I would cast maybe, late 30s, middle-aged woman, overweight, sitting there with tarot cards. Why? Because that is the typical stereotype of the psychic. And that actually is there's a lot of truth to that. Find a lot of really large bellied, overweight women as psychics. Why is that? Because it is the lower center that communicates. It is the lower center that receives, number one, information from the higher self. So if we assume that this psychic is somebody has real psychic ability, then what's happening is their higher self, as the antenna, is getting the information. The higher self gives it to the lower self in the navel. The navel then processes that information and translates it into human emotions and language and understanding. And then the psychic will communicate what he or she sees. Now, what also happens, and I've shared this a lot, is that somebody has, quote, psychic ability doesn't necessarily mean that they're getting information from the gods or the ancestors. It means that their lower self, which is also picking up information everywhere around it. Like when you pick up a vibe, when somebody walks in a room and you get a vibe about them, that's your lower self. That's your navel center is picking up the vibes from their navel center. And then that's where your gut instinct comes from. That's why people say, I got a gut instinct about him or her. It means that your navel center is picking up information from their navel center. So lots of times psychics can know what you're thinking and what you're feeling and not having a clue about what's going to happen in the future. And they may not know the difference because they're, somebody like that. You find a lot of them, they're big, they're overweight, they smoke, they drink, whatever. They're really unhealthy. So it's not like they're psychic because their body is this finely tuned machine. You know, a lot of them, you talk to them, my experience is they're really codependent. You know, they need to be in counseling. They've been through all kinds of trauma as kids, and they escape through spirituality. So it's not because they're these high-level spiritual beings. It means that their navel center, their lower self, has been highly developed for all kinds of psychological reasons. You know, the reason why you find a lot of empaths, you know, anybody that comes to me and, you know, through whatever, either of my channels, starts talking to me about how, no, I have this empathic ability, and I can feel people's feelings wherever I go, and I lose myself in a crowd, and I can't hear. What that is, and I don't have to say anything. I go, let me guess, you grew up in a dysfunctional household. Your parents somebody was an alcoholic, an abusive parent. Every single time I'm right. You know, there's some major dysfunction that they had as a kid. They're taking it on as they have this spiritual power. But what's happened is that when you live in a really dysfunctional home as a kid, in order to get your needs met or to avoid abuse or punishment, you have to get psychic really quick. So you have to learn what somebody else is thinking and feeling. You better be able to read body language and read energy from people really quickly so you can get what you need and, you know, avoid any negatives. They bring this into their life. They have all kinds of unresolved emotional things. They've got, you know, abusive ex-boyfriend, the psychic on the street corner, her ex-boyfriend is in prison for, you know, drug trafficking or something like that, right? And so they think that they're having this spiritual ability, when in reality what's happened is that having energetic filters and being able to pick up energy from other people does not necessarily have anything to do with spirituality. It's just part of being human. It's just the natural tools that we have on top of being able to read people. So you have somebody who went through that as a kid, and they have, you know, out of survival instinct, they have sharply honed these abilities. And then in this life now, they're an empath, and I'm a spiritual blah, blah, blah. And they have, you know, on the street corner, they go and they do rune readings or you know, any other kind of psychic reading, and right? So that's why they can pick up all kinds of information about you. On the one hand, they're just really good, whether they're conscious of it or not. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Some of them, they just have really good abilities to pick up all of your body language and the way that you talk, and, you know, all kinds of subtle, really subtle cues. They can read you. And some of them actually are able to pick up on your energy. In fact, that's how they survive in the world. They're codependents. They climb inside your energy, find out what you need, and then try and placate you by, you know, either manipulating you or giving you what you want or whatever, so that you'll love them. Sorry, a lot of psychics out there who, you know, a lot of people on here who think that you're super spiritual because you have these. If you come to me and start telling me how empathic you are and how psychic you are, my first response is going to be to you, wow, what happened to you when you were a kid? Because it doesn't mean that you're spiritual. But the important lesson here is, as we see in the myth, it is the lower self of Odin, Vili, and Ve that is communicating with the human who's there, which means that, you know, the two lower selves. By the way, this is why you can have really great sex with somebody but not get along with them. The sex can be amazing, but, you know, you end up fighting. It's because sex, again, using the body, and it's literally, I mean, you know, the two lower parts of the body come together. What's happening is that the unconscious minds are intertwining. So it means that you're relating to each other on an unconscious level. If it's a good relationship, it means that, you know, the health and the strength within your unconscious minds are coming together. If, again, you get like attracts like, there's a reason why that girl or that woman, whoever she is, on the boardwalk in Venice, California, there's a reason why her ex-husband or her ex-boyfriend is in jail for drug trafficking. It's because she connects to people with her wounds. And so she finds other people and their wounds connect. And that's why sex is really amazing. And oh my God, I've known you my whole life. It's because you're connecting on some level on the unconscious level. It could be your wounds that are connecting, which make you think you're in love, and then you end up in this really crazy, screwed up, relationship. Or if you are actually emotionally balanced, then it's your strengths that bring you together. In any case, this is an object lesson we see in the myth itself that's teaching us that it's the lower centers that are involved in normal human communication, which includes shamanic journeying. When you're having a shamanic journey, it doesn't mean your third eye has left and you're traveling. It means that your lower self, that you are just simply traveling within your lower self. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing unspiritual about it, but that's all it is. Okay? Let's continue. The fact that Gylf is communicating with the lowest of the three kings accurately reflects my experience that it is through the lower subconscious center of will in the navel that a wizard communicates with other spirits or entities or other human spirits while in trance. And that means, while other people are alive. If you have dreams, you talk to somebody, that's alive, your next door neighbor or something like that. If it wasn't purely fantasy within you, your lower self and their lower self communicated during the night. Oh, and here I go to say it. And consequently, when a shaman communicates with other humans who also have these three power centers, it is through the navel that any communication by means of speech is accomplished. So, from my perspective, in this story, I am reading about a shaman king who seeks to travel to Asgard, but Odin knows all about it ahead of time and chooses to communicate with him. Odin reveals himself to Gylf in all three of his aspects, but because Gylf is merely a human, Odin communicates with him on the subconscious level where Gylf is most able to understand him. This is the energy center of the subconscious found in the lower bodily center of the navel. The concept of Odin, Will, and Weoch as symbolized by the three kings in Asgard is not unique to Teutonic mysticism. It is found in other traditions in almost identical imagery. One such tradition is the Shang Ching Taoist tradition. According to this Taoist tradition, it is taught that if a person meditates on the three ones in the body and is able to unite their human powers with the powers of the three ones in the cosmos at large, then that person will attain immortality, release supernatural powers over manifested nature, and eventually be able to phase out of material existence, be transformed into a higher vibration, ascend to heaven in the light of day, and become a god. So that's a quote, by the way, from Taoist mythology. Quote, when you accomplish all that, which is you have these three centers, right, within you, which is what makes you human. Animals don't have three centers, only humans have three centers, which is why humans are Man. They are divine mind on earth. They are a reflection of the gods on earth. So according to the Taoists, the universe is created by three ones. So the three ones are the trinity of the universe. And that's why to this day, pretty much every culture, just about almost any religion, except for the incredibly stupid, screwed up, monotheist Abrahamic religion, you have a trinity. You have, even Christianity had to create its own trinity because it wasn't there. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. In modern New Age, you have mind, body, and spirit. And in the Norse tradition, you have Odin, Vili, and Ve. And in the Hindu tradition, you have Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. And in the Taoist tradition, you have the three ones, heaven, earth, and man. And so their understanding is that in the Shang Ching tradition, what you do is these three ones within you, you spend time meditating on connecting these three together, purifying them. And when you can get these purified of all of your, limited attachments and limited illusions, then they will reflect the three ones that exist in the cosmos. When the two are the same, then you become immortal. Immortal doesn't mean you live forever. It means that you leave your human body and you become a god. The idea is you already are a God. You already are that. And all you're doing is you've had this journey as a human where you've taken on illusion. You've chosen to do that. Please stop being a victim about it. You've chosen to take on the illusion so that you can have fun and learn things. But then when you want to go back, then you have to forget all of the limited stuff, and then your three centers will then automatically reflect the three ones that are in the universe. Then you become, there's no difference between you and the universe. You are it. It is you. There's no need for you to have a human body anymore, so your human body goes away. So let's see what else I say about that. I know I'm going to say something about it, so let's talk about it. So the concept of Odin, Will, and Whale, symbolized by the three kings in Asgard, is not unique to Teutonic mysticism. It is found in other traditions in almost identical imagery. One such tradition is the Shang, Ching Taoist tradition. According to this Taoist tradition, it is taught that if a person meditates on the three ones in the body and is able to unite their human powers with the powers of the three ones in the cosmos at large, then that person will attain immortality, release supernatural powers over manifested nature, and eventually be able to phase out of material existence, be transformed into a higher vibration, ascend to heaven in the light of day, and become a god. I like that phrase again because what I hear in that phrase, ascend to heaven, and again, that's a quote directly from the Shang Ching mythological texts. And I'm taking that directly. When somebody does that, they ascend to heaven in the light of day, which means it doesn't happen in a dream state. It means you're waking conscious reality. You become consciously aware of your deityhood. So there's a difference between the way Taoists go about immortality and the way that the Vedics go about it, the way that Hindus. So most of you probably know about moksha, liberation, enlightenment. And enlightenment is not the same as becoming a god. Those are two different things. One of the reasons is you're dealing with two different kinds of energy. Now, if you guys want to know the difference between Kundalini and Chi, and a lot of people make this mistake, it drives me crazy, and I'm completely confounded as to people who supposedly know what they're talking about make this mistake. Go onto YouTube and type in, what is Kundalini? And you will hear no shortage of people saying, Kundalini is the life force energy of the universe. It's not. Kundalini is your psychological ahamkara. Ahamkara means the creator of I am. Your ego, not in a bad way, just self. Your human psychological self. The chakras are interesting as I think about it here, that in this myth you have both the 7 chakras and the 3 ones. That's interesting. I'll get back to that in a second. But I forgot what I was saying. What was I saying? That was really interesting. What the hell was I saying? Well, whatever the hell it was really deep and meaningful. The difference between Kundalini and Chi. Chi is associated with the 3 ones. So when you're using life force energy in Qigong, if you guys want to know why you're doing all the Qigong, it's for this reason. So that you can purify your life force energy in the 3 centers. And then when the 3 centers become purified and can communicate with themselves, automatically they reflect the 3 essences within the cosmos that created the cosmos. And then you no longer are this limited human. You're now infinite. You now become a god. And so Kundalini is about the yogic tradition, and the reason why they talk about release from the spiritual body, and they talk about release from the Maya, because Kundalini is Maya. Kundalini is illusion, because without the illusion you cannot have an identity. You cannot be human. So in order to transcend humanity, you must first fully become human. Those of you who want to escape the matrix, you want to escape your humanity, you are asking to come back again. So those of you trying to escape your humanity, escape the pain, escape your psychology, you want to get out of the Maya and get to the... You're judging yourself for having this illusionary power, which is Kundalini. You are preventing yourself from achieving enlightenment. The way to achieve enlightenment is to become fully human. Really go deep into the illusion, fully be part of the illusion, and then go, oh, wow, this is just an illusion. That was fun. This is what Kundalini is about. Kundalini is in your root chakra for a reason. The root chakra is what? The earth, is what grounds you. So your Kundalini is your sense of self, your ahamkara. That literally in Vedic mythology, it screws you into place down in your root chakra, which is your identity, your physical connection to the physical world. And then what does it do? It rises up through the chakras, and each time it goes through the chakra, you learn the psychological lessons of those chakras. The earth is, security, stuff. The sexual center is the superficial identity. That's why when kids, when they get to be pubescent, what do? They want to get out of the house and go to clubs and dance. And that's why dancing is so sexual, because it's connecting the sexual centers of the body. And now we've got younger people who are, yeah, I'm an individual and so are you. That's why we're doing the same dance, right? So it's a superficial idea of being different, of having an identity. And then you move to the navel chakra, where you start saying who you are, and I'm going to achieve this in life. And then you realize that power and accomplishment means nothing. Then you become super spiritual, and you go to church and you walk around with tracts. This is the heart chakra, and you go trying to tell people to be part of us, and everybody is the same, and you're super spiritual, except everybody has to have the same religion as you. And if you don't believe in Krishna, then you're not truly spiritual. Or if you're not a Buddhist, you're not really spiritual. Or if you're not that's the heart center. And then the heart center goes, oh my God, it's not like that at all. And then you go to the throat chakra, which is the teacher, which is me, which I can't stop talking. I got to talk about spirituality all the time, because now this is where I'm at. I'm right here. And this is the guy on the mountaintop who you go to, and he expounds on the nature of the universe, and it's just him and God, him and the universe, and that's his identity. And then he gets past that, and I don't know what that is because I haven't done that yet. And then he gets up to the third eye, and then he sees reality for what it is, and it doesn't matter. And then he gets to the crown chakra, where he becomes everything, and then the Kundalini then has to come back down, and then it goes back down, all the way back down, and it roots itself again, and then he walks around and he's just a human. And this will be somebody that lives next door to you, who gives, cookies to little kids and is really nice and wonderful and doesn't care about all that. And it's like, the spiritual stuff. Oh yeah, I used to do that. Yeah, that's great. I'm really happy for you that you're doing that. And they just live life, and that's a full human, fully, completely human. And then you get to go the next step. Then you get to clean up the three selves, and then the three selves connect to the three ones, and then you become a god. So they're two different things. Chi is working on one thing, Kundalini is working on another. They are not the same thing. Although they are stimulated by each other. If you do a lot of breath work, guess what happens? The Kundalini becomes stimulated. If you have your Kundalini stimulated, which most people who think they're having a Kundalini awakening, all that's happened is that their sense of self, their ahamkara, their psychological being has been stimulated, which is connected to the nervous system. That's why the nervous system freaks out, and people, they feel fire in their nerves or whatever it is. They have headaches, or they can't function, or they get dizzy. It's also why they go through delusions of grandeur, or feeling like they're being attacked by demons. It's all psychological. And it is Kundalini. Kundalini is the psychological energy of the body. And so when that happens, if you're not doing energy work, if you're not doing Qigong, if you're not grounding yourself with energy, and you're just stimulating the Kundalini in one fashion, then you can go bonkers. You can go completely bonkers and think that you are the king or queen of the universe and that you're responsible for everything. That's what I hear from people who are having Kundalini awakenings. They go, yeah, my Kundalini awakened and I saw that I was in control of the world and it's a really heavy responsibility. Nutcase, lunatic, nutbag. Where did you come up with that? And then at the same time, they're being attacked by demons. psychological. So I'm just realizing now, it's interesting that King Gilf shows up, and the first thing that happens is some guy's juggling his chakras. So in other words, you have to get past the illusion of the 7 chakras. The guy juggling. What is a juggler? He's a performer. Performing is an illusion. It's part of, acting, singing. You're presenting, creating an illusion. So isn't that interesting? You have to get past the illusion of the self and the 7 chakras to gain access to the 3 ones. I'm just now realizing it. Do you see why I can see, looking at this, that this is real mythology? This is the real stuff? Because any true mythology is going to do this. Any real mythology is transmitted from the gods. The people who write it down don't even know what it means. It's for those of us that are doing the work and achieving awareness to read it and go, oh. And the only reason I know this is because I did work in all these other practices. That's why I have such, I get that look on my face with people who are just stuck in their own thing, and they're not willing to understand and see the connections in other traditions. All right, I'm starting to babble. Let's go on. All right, the myth of Gylfaginning is almost identical in every detail to a very powerful esoteric Shang, Ching Taoist meditation. That meditation is called the method of holding the 3 ones. Let me write it down. There's been one person asking me about it, and he keeps calling it the 3 wands. It's not the wands. It is called the method of, and you can go, if you can find it, there's a book out there. If you want to go read it, you can. Method of holding the 3 ones. If you want to go look for it, there's a book out there teaching you how to do it. It's out of print right now, so it'll probably be really expensive. I used to have a copy of it. I think I may have it somewhere, tucked away somewhere. I think I do. I might have given it away or sold it or something before I left. Where was I? All right. There's a lot of questions here which I'm looking forward to answering, but let's continue because I'm enjoying the reading. And it's all about me if you haven't figured it out. Looking at this myth, I am once again struck with the overwhelming similarity between these traditions. It seems that the Teutonic shamans had also discovered the same triad of powers as the Taoist shamans. Having had a similar spiritual vision of the 3 ones myself many years ago, I am convinced that the 3 kings in this myth are the same 3 powers as the Taoist 3 ones, but presented through the filter of the Teutonic culture. There is a very simple and powerful meditation to awaken and align the 3 powers of Wod, Will, and Whale. I will teach it to you now, although I'm not going to in this video. I'll do it in the next one. It involves using the combined powers of the North Star, which is the god Til, and the 7 stars of the Big Dipper, which attracts the powers of the Vanir. I don't know what I was saying there, but it sounds good. These combined forces of the Vanir and the North Star help to bring the powers of Wod, Will, and Whale into balance with the powers of Woden at large in the cosmos. So, yeah, the Big Dipper. So I was making the connection with the Big Dipper to the Vanir. I don't know why I was making that connection, but in any case. Anyway, so next time I come on here, I'm gonna read to you a meditation which I wrote out. This is why, again, guys, this is probably one of the most powerful meditations you can find anywhere. And I've got it here in this $5 book, or however much it costs. It's just hiding here in plain sight. And if you really are interested in what I have to offer, read the books, because I'm not going to, like in this one, I'm telling you what it is, but lots of times I'm going to put stuff in there that's going to be like the most powerful stuff that you have to be initiated after so many years of blah, blah, blah. And I'm just giving it out there. And the reason I do that, and I don't tell you about it, is because people who are meant to find it will find it. People who aren't, you'll look at it and you'll go, oh yeah, that's a kind of a cool meditation, but I do this other thing, and I did that, and you'll just pass right by it. And the most powerful thing in the universe that will give you enlightenment, you'll just look at and go, oh yeah, I have my own thing, man. And you'll go, and so that's how I know you're not meant for it. So this is one, and I'm telling you ahead of time that it is what I say it is. Anyway, I'll talk you through that next time. God, I should charge money for this. Okay, so we'll come back to that in the next time I come on here. So for now, I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to look. Actually, before I do that, let me make sure that I put it where it belongs so that I don't get confused and I start looking around. Let me get it where it needs to be. There we go. Now I can quit that. And now we'll take a look at questions. All right. Riho Rasta, question. Can specific diseases be looked as entities that have attached to you and deal with it by dealing with the entity, by using the tools of exorcism, for example, diseases connected to digestion? Well, that is definitely what a lot of people do in all kinds of traditions. And I think that there is some power to that. Everything has its ups and its downs. So the short answer to the question is yes. And there are people who could, let me put it this, here's how I would explain this. First off, if that's the way you want to do it, then stop listening to me now, because I'm going to now explain it, which means that it could ruin it for you. So if you want to have your diseases cast out of you through exorcism, then I suggest you stop listening to this broadcast and then go find somebody and do it. Okay? Give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're still listening? It means you want to hear my explanation. No matter whether, if somebody is able to exorcise it through some kind of an exorcism ritual, what's really happening is that the ritual is the magic carpet that the person's unconscious latches onto. It is the person that heals themselves. Nobody heals you. You heal yourself. You heal yourself when you go to your true nature, when you operate from your highest, purest, truest essence. Then you're able to get rid of the illusion, because that's what any discomfort, any imbalance is illusion. That's why you can have, same kind of thing, you can have two people, one person gets the flu and somebody else doesn't. Same environment. We could say they have a strong immune system, but we could also say that the person who got sick had some kind of unconscious, unresolved, what do you call it? And that opened them up to attracting. We could say that about the world right now, that the world is, yes, demon possessed by COVID. But what is COVID? COVID is, if nothing else, it is the spirit of isolation, because that's what it's bringing. It's bringing isolation. And what does it attack mostly? I don't know what it is now, but in the beginning, people couldn't breathe. They suffocate. What do you need? You need to be able to breathe, breathing and life force energy and all that, the spirit of life. So we're suffocating in our isolation. We could say that's what COVID is. From a spiritual perspective, of course. So could that be the case with digestion issues? Well, the other thing is digestion issues could also be completely psychosomatic, meaning not that they're not really there, but that it is the unconscious mind. And, there's, the guy who came up with TMS, tension, you can go look it up right now. You can look up TMS or tension myositis syndrome. You can go look that up. The guy who discovered that, who was not a New Age guy, he was a clinical doctor in an office way back in the 60s. All kinds of things, including all kinds of diseases, according to him, including cancer and other things, he says is tension myositis syndrome, which is, in other words, short answer is that you're filled with unconscious conflict, and your inability or unwillingness to look at your unconscious conflict is so intolerable that it gets pushed into the tissues, and that the brain shuts off nutrients and blood flow to the nerves and the tissues, which then creates a dysfunction and an imbalance, which creates a disease. And so he basically is saying the same thing I am. You want to be healthy, be completely conscious. It sounds far more easy than it is. I'm not meaning it to be. I'm not trying to say it cavalierly. It's very simple, but it's not at all easy to do. It takes a lot. This is what awareness is. You can't get any better than that. I was on the phone with my teacher today, and I said something about things that I'm doing in my life, and I said, all I want is I just want to be conscious. As long as I'm conscious and aware, I can do whatever I want. He says, that's it. I mean, can you get any better than that? That's what it's all about. So, I don't know if I answered your question or not. Luke S. Question: the word third, Proto-Germanic. I don't know I'm not analyzing the word third. That is the English translation of whatever the Old Norse is. I don't think you need to get wrapped up in that. Third just means, I don't know. I don't know why you need to know that. I'm not saying you shouldn't go figure it out, but I think you're overreaching here in this particular instance. You know how I am about words, but I think in this case you're overreaching. Riho Rasta question: have you communicated with spirits by giving them offerings into the fire? Yes. Sweet, e.g. sweets, breads, nuts. Why do spirits need offerings? Do you give offerings in some other way? Yeah, everything is an offering. But the reason why spirits need offerings is, I can give you the basest understanding of this. There's, by the way, you should never eat food that's been offered to, especially like dead people. Like, if you go to a funeral and there's like food laid out for the dead person to enjoy, do not eat that. Because that spirit that has just left the body, right, or their lower self, because it could be their lower self, that lower self can't eat the food, but it can smell it. So it'll go and try and pull from the scent, because it can't eat, but it's going to want to pull from the scent. Once it does that, whatever life is in that is gone. If you try and eat that food, you're going to eat, something that's been, all the life's been pulled out of it. But when you're doing rituals to deities, that's different from what I teach when I say, if you offer nuts and fruit to a deity, that's different. So you can, because the deity comes down and does the same thing, smells it or enjoys it, but because it's a deity, now that food is empowered. So you should eat that food. You should drink that water if it's been offered to a deity. But so that's one of the reasons why you eat it. If you're offering it to a deity, is the deity has now blessed that with its energy, and you're now taking the essence of the deity into your body. But the other reason is that in order to get something, you have to give. The law of Gebo, the law of giving and receiving. There's this, you have to have that. If you don't sacrifice something, if you don't give of yourself, you're not going to get anything. So that's one of the other things that we do. And of course, we can offer all kinds of things. If you want to give an offering to Saturn, which is karma, then go sacrifice your time and, feed the homeless, or go, volunteer at an old folks home. That's an offering to Saturn. You want to do an offering to Venus, go, give money to artists, or create some beautiful mural and give it away to the city. Those are offerings to various deities in various ways. So that you have to, this is why you have to pay me for my time. Because if I am truly a teacher, then that means I am channeling either your higher self or your guides, or other, my guides or whatever are being channeled through me. If I am truly a teacher, the way to activate that connection so that your higher, your guides can talk to my guides and give me information about you, and or if you want to learn from my tradition and have information come out of me for you, the way you stimulate that is by paying me money. That is your sacrifice. So you have to sacrifice to get anything out of life. There's if you ever watched the miniseries Rome, one of my favorite, I love watching because there are things that they've gotten some historical things right. One of them is that's really interesting is that you find out that way back when that people used mudras in every, just going around doing whatever. Like you see this in very old pictures of the saints and in Jesus. You'll see them, have some kind of a mudra, which means that they were still connected to the Roman understanding. If you were out in the square and you were talking, you did this, and you would point down or you do all kinds of things with your hands as you spoke. If you were to curse somebody, you would do that, that sign like that or whatever. It all had meaning. So even though the Romans, we don't associate the Romans with Vedic Hindu mysticism, Indo-Europeans, they knew what all of these, they knew what all this stuff meant. That this all had meaning, and it had energetic power behind it. You were unlocking things by, whatever mudra you were using. I forgot what I was saying. Hopefully I answered your question there. Magic Song question. Can Sleipnir be connected to sacred sexuality in the Nordic lore? Thinking about this because the magical horse was born out of a sexual act of Loki, fire god, sacred sex vehicle. I'm not going to say no. It sounds like a stretch to me, but that doesn't mean that I'm accurate about that. It does sound like a stretch, though. Sounds like you're reaching. Sleipnir for me is actually another way to look at it is aligning your sexual energy will give you access to Sleipnir. I like that better. Again, that's my thing. It doesn't have to be true, but I'll tell you why. And that's because for me, Sleipnir, the 8-legged horse that Odin rides, is this, the thunder wheel, the 8 directions, and the rune wheel. So I've used the Eyjolfur there as a way of representing the 9 worlds, the 8 directions, and then the one in the center. So Odin sits in the center, which is, Odin is the example for humans. So Odin represents the fully evolved human who lives in the center of Midgard and yet can travel to all of the 9 worlds. So again, I think that you're looking at it superficially. I think that you're reaching a little bit. I don't necessarily say you're wrong, but I would prefer to say that the sacrifice of your sexual energy or aligning your sexual energy to your spiritual powers gives you the ability to become Odin and ride on all of the 8 legs of the universe. I prefer that more. I think that's a better way of looking at it for me. All right, I don't see any more questions here, so I'll do a little bit of business. So the lockdown package is going to start. I'm going to start winding it down because the lockdown is changing. Now, depending on where you live in the world, here where I'm at, there's basically no lockdown, but that's only this part of this country here in Australia. You go farther south and you get into New South Wales and you get into Victoria, totally different deal. Things are locked down tight. It looks like things are going to stay locked down in the United States for quite a while, or half-assed lockdown, which means nothing's going to happen. It's just the virus is just going to keep peaking and nothing's ever going to happen. I don't wish that on anybody. But in any case, the idea that we were going to be in a lockdown for a period of time and now it's over, things seem to be progressing differently than that. So I'm no longer taking people who get the lockdown package, which I think you should go check out, lockdown.thunderwizard.com. I'm no longer giving the services. So I was offering 5 services which had to be done in at least 2 sessions, and that's really what you were paying for. You were paying for those 2 sessions, and then I gave you, $3,214 worth of stuff for free. So I'm not giving those, but I am still, the product is the $3,214 worth of all of my video package training, certificate, all the stuff I have control over. And bear in mind, I don't have control over it. It bothers me when people don't listen. I don't have control over the Patreon subscription or the books. I can't replace that. People are trying to make deals with me, and they buy the lockdown package, and they say, yeah, what I want instead is I want to get X amount. And it's like, it doesn't work like that. Only the stuff I have control over. I have control over how much it costs for these video teachings. That's why I can give them away. So you're getting about a $2,000 savings now. Go check it out. Thunderwizard.com is the subscription site. So if you at the $25 level, it's a monthly subscription. If you don't like it, you can unsubscribe at the end of the month or whenever. You can unsubscribe and then it won't automatically subscribe. $25 a month is the Mastery of Shamanism. All the stuff we're talking about, I take you in depth from A to Z on the Thunder Wizard shamanic practices. I go into specific detail on things to do, rituals, etc., etc., etc. The 8 directions, the 9 worlds, and how to shamanic journey, how to do rituals to the gods, all that kind of stuff. I talk about that, and then I also talk about the Manifestation Mastery course, where I go into specifics on how to manifest your reality, how to use the matrix as a tool to create what you want in life. So that is also there. Courses.thunderwizard.com. This stuff has other stuff like books and other things like that. And then, of course, subscribe and if you subscribe and hit the bell button, both of those things, then you will achieve enlightenment, guaranteed. All right, now let's take a look, see if there are any more questions. That's not a question. All right, there we go. No more questions. I do find it interesting, when I give people an answer they may not necessarily like, they always have to double down. That's not what I was trying to say. What I meant was, look, guys, I've got an opinion. It's really not that important to have me agree with you or disagree with you, like you, dislike you. Just know that I'm full of myself, and I only have 1/10 of the information because it's been written down. There's no need to get it right and let me know that I understand. I'm going to forget you exist once I turn this off. Really, guys, don't take me all that seriously. Take what I give and then do whatever the hell you want with it after that. But I appreciate all of the questions and all of the interactions, even though I can be a pain in the ass about it sometimes. All right, so nothing else. All right, so that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much. I will see you are, and now I'm told I'm projecting. You guys are so full of shit. All right, that's it. Enough for me. I will see you guys all later, and I'll see you guys all next time.